We are back at this again. This is Crash Talk 3D. And as we said last week, we were having a guest. A little bit about me. I am LaDonna Claude, your host, and here is Michael Gersh, my co-host, and our very own special guest. I'm going to let Michael introduce her and give her platform. But before I do, I would like all you to have a sit back, enjoy this ride because this is our very first guest on Crash Talk 3D, and we're here to save lives. That's our main focus, and hear each and every one's story. So, Miss Candace Lightner is the first one that accepted our offer being on this platform, and so, Mr. Michael, take it away.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Candace. A great story. When LaDonna and I were talking about you being our first guest, LaDonna was like, you could take the lead because you probably met Candace before and talked to her. I said, I never met her before. It's only been through emails and everything else. And LaDonna has your phone number. I went, I don't even have that. Uh, so
Yes.
this is a great opportunity. And for our viewers out there, Candace Lightner is the founder of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Also, We Save Lives. She's credited to saving over 40,000 lives. She's an author. She's an
400,000.
400,000 lives. And she's in a new movement now called Drop the A Word, which we'll talk about, which is one of the reasons why we have her on here. But as for me, as a speaker and an advocate as well, since my mother was killed by a drunk driver in 1970 and I was almost killed, Candace, you have been an inspiration for me, and I couldn't have become a speaker and been involved if it wasn't for you. So I thank you very much as well for all that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to get thanked every once in a while. So thank you. She's mute.
Oh, she is. Hey, it's our first one. This is what's going to happen. It's nice.
It happens on others as well.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about you for these young viewers, especially that don't know anything about your story. And then we would definitely want to go into where you're at right now on the SB 1071, which is a big thing that's going on right now in the news that I've heard as well, doing some studying. So, at this time, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. Well, my daughter Carrie was killed when she was 13 years old by a multiple repeat offender drunk driver, and in 1980 on May 3rd. And when I learned that probably nothing would happen to him, it was a hit and run. And when I learned that he had been arrested and probably nothing would happen to him, I started MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, to change the culture of a nation. And I say that because apparently I'm credited with doing that, but I didn't think of it at the time. I just wanted to make people understand that this was a serious problem and a preventable problem and something they could do something about. And so we did had chapters at that time. MAD was grassroots. That's not true anymore, but then they were. So we had chapters in every state and several other countries. Then it became a really big deal. And then I left after about 5.5 years and wrote a book called Giving Sorrow Words: How to Cope with Grief and Get On with Your Life. And became a consultant. And then about in 2014, I was actually at a Lifesavers conference, which I don't go to anymore, but used to then. And I would see a group over here and a group over there, and I'd go over and say, hey, have you worked with this group over here? And they'd say no. And I'd think, well, that's odd. And so I did this all around the conference. And then I went back and I said, why aren't you working? Why aren't you all working together, and
Yes.
joining with each other and doing this and that? Well, they haven't asked, or they won't work with whatever. And I thought, this isn't right. So I decided to start. Oh, and at that time, distracted driving was slowly coming to the fore, but nobody was really doing much about it. And drugged driving was just kind of creeping in there. And again, nobody was doing anything about drug driving. So I thought, why not start a coalition of organizations, which is what We Save Lives is, and we have probably over 100 now, including our National Passenger Safety Week organizations, the Not an Accident campaign, and one other one. We have probably well over 100, maybe closer to 200 organizations that we work with on various campaigns. And of which I'm really proud, and I think it's absolutely terrific because you accomplish far more when you work together, as you well know, and that's what we do. Now, do you want me to talk about Not an Accident? Because our bill just passed
Yes,
in the
yes.
judiciary.
It's
I mean,
it's
we're
Yay!
making good.
it's very exciting. So yes,
Yes,
please.
yes, please. I want to know
And
the about this bill a little bit more, and especially the ones that don't know anything about it, and how it's going to change, and why does it matter?
So years ago, I don't remember how, 4, 5, 6 years ago. I mean, I actually started this at MAD, not this campaign, but one crash versus accident. And that was trying to convince people that what we were dealing with here were crashes, crimes, collision wrecks, and not accidents. And it just gripes me, especially when I hear a victim or a survivor say, my mother was killed in a drunk driving accident or distracted driving accident, because they're not accidents. We all know that.
Right.
97% of these crashes and all are committed by driver error, and they're preventable. And so by making the right decisions and safe decisions. So I started that campaign, Crash versus Accident. And God, we went to AP style book, got them to change their guidelines for media. We really went after the media more than anybody else because they're notorious for doing this. We got major Rolling Stone magazines and other magazines to change their stories online and take out the word accident, etc., and posted on it, and just kept up this campaign. And also, we're joined by about 30 other organizations who supported this movement. Well, you all probably don't know Matt Capilouto, but Matt's daughter Alexandra was killed by fentanyl drug poisoning.
Okay.
And in his case, unlike many others, he was able to get the drug dealer prosecuted and sentenced and convicted and sentenced. And he and I've kind of mentored him over the years as he's tried to get this law passed in California. And it's called Alexandra's Law. And I don't know if you're familiar with the advisements that in California, if you're arrested for drunk driving, you sign, and I can't think of the name of it, with murder. I think it's a murder advisement. It's called something like that. And that you sign it that says you are aware that drunk driving can kill. That means once you sign it, if you're arrested again for drunk driving and it's a fatality, you can be
Hmm.
charged with murder.
Hmm.
So Matt wanted to do the same thing for drug poisonings. And so I mentored him through this process, and we became good friends and have kept up over the years. And recently, about 3 or 4 months ago, we were on the phone together with another victim whose daughter, Rose, had been killed by a drunk driver who had signed the Watson advisement twice on a first and second conviction, and then killed his daughter. And he's now being charged with murder and will be
Wow.
prosecuted and sentenced to at least 25 years.
Okay.
And so Matt happened to mention, he said, are you all aware that your children's death certificates under manner of death say accident? And I said, oh no, my stuff, my daughter's things are at the Smithsonian and she has an exhibit there. So I didn't have access to her death certificate. And I'm going, no, that can't be because the driver was convicted of manslaughter, blah, blah. This was a crime. He said, no, it does. It says accident. So I sent away for her death certificate. And sure enough,
Hmm.
under manner of death, it's an accident. Now, yes, there's the cause of death, which gives the gruesome medical details, but under manner of death. And I'm thinking there are 5 categories. I think it's suicide, natural, I don't know, illness, undetermined, and accident, or homicide and accident. And I'm thinking, why wasn't this listed then as a homicide? They didn't have manslaughter. So we thought, why not name National Association of Medical Examiners? Apparently, set these policies up 100 years ago. I mean, truly many, like 1910 or something. And, times were different then. So we thought, why not call them, and say, hey, what's going on here? And, we don't really appreciate this. So we did. And we talked to the president of NAME, and I thought he was very condescending. I did towards us, victims and survivors. There were about 5 of us on the phone call. It was a Zoom call. Well, we've been doing this for, umpteen years and blah, 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 blah. And this is a medical determination. And it's not, by the way, it is a legal determination. It
Mhm.
has no business being a medical determination. So, and then I blew them off. Everybody else got upset. I blew them off, and I'm starting to think, start a campaign. Let's do a campaign. So I said to everybody, we got off done. I said, this is going to change because we're gonna launch a campaign. And we did, not an accident.info. You can go to the website. And we found a lobbyist in California. There was already a bill pending in Washington state, which isn't going anywhere, but the one we did in California is fabulous. What it does, it was so, Ivy Fitzpatrick was so brilliant in this. So what it does is allows the families of any crash, crime, collision, whatever, where the death certificate says accident, but there was a conviction, such as arson. Did you know that their death certificates will say accident? Even
No
if an
idea.
arsonist gets
Mm-mm.
convicted, yeah. So, such as arson, such as impaired driving, distracted driving, whatever, and drug poisonings. And if there is a conviction and the appeals process, has been done, the families can then go back in to a judge and have the death certificate of their loved one changed to say homicide. All we have to do is show there was a conviction, and we can get it changed to homicide. We've got 37 organizations have joined this coalition. We have the support of the District Attorneys Association, law enforcement groups, Sheriff's Association, retirement groups, etc., that have all come behind and supported this bill. The only opposition we have is from, guess who, name, the coroners and the medical examiners. Oh, so what? And I'm telling you, the first hearing that we had, which you can see, I think we've got it posted all over social media, maybe on YouTube, and it was the one that we had the press conference and I
Mhm.
spoke, and then I did the testifying at the hearing. The lobbyist came up, and this is after, by the way, I've testified about my daughter's crash, and I never have gone in to the gruesome details of how they um, I couldn't donate any of her organs because nothing was
Mhm.
salvageable. I mean, the funeral home didn't think they could fix her up enough for me to see her, etc. I've never done that. All my time at Med, I've never talked about that, but I did here
Mhm.
to point out what a horrendous crime this was and how it was committed by a criminal who had committed this crime multiple times before and been
Mhm.
convicted and was again convicted after her death. And then, I see accident under manner of death. And then the victims, other victims of impaired driving, but mostly of drug poisonings, all came up holding the photos of their loved ones. And believe me, they didn't all tell their stories. Some of them, one of the women that came up, she had a son killed in an impaired driving crash and another son killed by drug poisoning,
Mm.
by carfentanil. I mean, just horrific stories. Anyway, it was so emotional. Well, the legislators, you could see, were really taken by this, and then the lobbyist came up and did his 2 cents, and the legislators are saying, yeah, but this is wrong. You know, how can you call this an accident? I mean, we knew right then that we had
Mhm.
made a difference. Even if the bill didn't pass, we knew we had made a difference. And I
Mhm.
can't tell you how many people have heard my testimony and said, you have to pass a law to get this changed? I mean, you've got to be kidding me. This is such
Right.
a common sense thing. So we had the Senate Health Committee hearing, and it passed, I think it was 9-0. And this one was 11 or 12-0, the Senate Judiciary. I mean, next we go to appropriations, then the Assembly Health. And so we still have a long way to go. But we feel really good about it because we have other states now interested in
Yes.
doing the same thing. So if you want to do this in your state, let me know. And we have other victims and survivors. I mean, this is really a victim survivors rights issue, don't you think? I mean,
Mhm.
getting it labeled correctly and honestly is the way it should be. And when they label it dishonestly, it gives incorrect data to all of these
Correct.
government agencies and funding sources, et cetera. And, we're saying, well, we can correct that. And we were just talking about this before I got on this call. I said, feel proud because in all the years that these organizations, name, et cetera, have been doing it this way, even though times have changed, it's very antiquated. Nobody has challenged them, not CDC, not any
Hmm.
other agencies that get their data. I said, it's been us, 5 victims and survivors, that
Mm.
finally challenged them and asked them to rethink their policies, which are wrong.
Right.
So yeah, that's why I'm really excited because we'll make history as it passes.
You are definitely gonna make some history. I have to hurrah on that one. I am totally with you on that. I feel as though you already answered some of my other questions altogether because I want to know how this will make a different change. You answered that. I appreciate that. And so, how others can follow this lead from state to state?
Right. Well, I have interest here in Virginia. Of course, I'm in Virginia. So, you all know Tammy Guido.
Hmm.
So she
Yes.
and I are going to be doing this here in Virginia. And we already have one of our team members, Carol, lives in Washington State, and her bill is already in, but unfortunately, it's not a good bill and it's not going anywhere. So we'll change that and do something similar to what we did in California. And I was contacted this morning and yesterday, actually, last couple of days, by some people in Florida who would like to see this done there. And I've actually been contacted by health groups, nurses, first responders, and doctors who all agree with this, by the way,
Hmm.
and are interested in looking at it in wherever they're based and wherever they live. So we feel this is going to move across the nation unless NAME decides to rethink their policies and change them, which is what they should do.
Well, I definitely believe in the change, and I believe change does happen. So, with
Yeah.
all of us on one accord, because I am with We Save Lives, and I am definitely in agreement with this bill because it does will definitely make a difference in what needs to happen. Because we don't want someone coming back and, like you said, gave a great example, they can come back and change it by saying homicide. So, we don't want to see that happen. So,
Think of it this by putting homicide under manner of death, it's another way of holding the perpetrators accountable.
mhm,
When you say accident under manner of death, it's enabling them to continue their behavior.
mm, that's a great
So
way to put
true.
that.
Yeah.
So, Michael, did you have a different question?
I have a couple of questions. Number one is if you were a M&M, which one would you be and why? Plain or peanut?
I'd be almond.
Almond. Oh, that's
She
even
picked all
different.
out.
I know. She went even different. She went
Yeah,
almond.
I prefer an almond one. Yeah,
Why almond?
because I like almonds and
Okay.
Fair enough. I'm not going to say anything. That's but that's a fun question. I always like that because the creativity. But one of the questions I have is how far back, if these things all change, can we go back and change someone's death certificate? Like mine, of course, 1970, where things
Mhm.
were totally different, as we all know. And it's in New York, so that's a whole different state. But are we talking it's going to go all the way back to as far as we
There's
can?
no limit.
Okay.
According to IVR lobbyists, there's no limit. And by the way, right now you can go on the website, notanaccident.info. It's a We Save Lives campaign, but we have a separate website set up for it. And you can go in. We have a resource there on asking for a new death certificate with a change. They won't agree to it, we're finding. But you can do it. It's like a $20 fee or something. You send off the old one, say why you want the new one, etc., and what you want it to say. But so far, nobody's been successful in getting them to change it. But you can try that in New York in the meantime.
Right. Because I live in
Mm,
Ohio, so I think in fact, I know I could probably get some people in terms of, you know, hopping on the bandwagon to what you're doing. Like a friend of mine, Christine Monchek, who lost her son a few years ago, Andrew, and that guy was sentenced to 5 years, and he was let out early. And then what was supposed to be a lifetime sentence wasn't really a lifetime, I mean, a lifetime ban against driving really wasn't, because then the judge overturned that too, which is, we
Mhm.
all know, is just ridiculous. And, that's, I think, the frustrating part of being on the victim side of things, where we don't necessarily see the justice involved, where we just keep getting hit again and again with these type of things.
No question about it. And it's amazing. We set up a Facebook group page. And so a number of, whereas I just do a Facebook page, so I don't, people can't post on it, only I can post on it. But on the Facebook group page for Not an Accident.info, it's one sad story after another, because people can post their stories. But it's also one sad story in terms of a lack of justice. I mean,
Yes.
it's just both in impaired driving and drug poisoning. And it just amazes me. I mean, we've come a long way, because when the man that killed my daughter was sentenced, and he wouldn't have been sentenced if I hadn't started med, he went to a halfway house. He drove his car. He still had his license. He went to and from work every day, went home on the weekends. He was out 16 months. And at that time, it was one of the toughest sentences in this country. And only because I started mad. How pathetic was that? And by the way, after he got out, he drank and drove again and hit somebody else. But I'm just
Mm.
saying that, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go.
A
So
long way to
if
go.
they're interested, for example, in getting something going on this, they can contact me at info@wesavelives.org, um, which I think probably would be the best way. And, I'm happy to help them. And they can go on the website. And if they're a group, an organization, they
Hmm.
can join the coalition. And if they're an individual, they can sign the petition. And then they start getting our newsletters, and, they're kept up to date.
Okay, great.
Wonderful.
Or I'll just have LaDonna give me your phone number and I'll just call you directly. Uh,
He won't let that go, Candace, that I have
I
your
know.
number.
I said, Michael, she asked, you didn't.
that's
So what can I say?
fair. That is fair enough. I will. That's a fair statement. So
Oh,
we have about 10 minutes left on this Zoom. The other question I have, something you mentioned that you never. This might be a little bit tougher to answer, because I talk about grief and trauma. You said earlier you never talked about the details about
Details.
Carrie's. How was that? Was it scary? Was it freeing? That's probably the wrong word,
Oh, you
but
mean doing it this
you
time?
finally talked about it after carrying all that trauma and grief for so long. Those details. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I didn't carry that grief and trauma for so long, by the way. The reason that I didn't talk about it so many years ago is because I had to focus on what I could accomplish. And the fact that she was killed by a multiple repeat offender drunk driver was really enough. In this particular case, the reason I did, and I did give it some thought before I did it, is because the legislature needed to understand how horrific
hmm.
this crime is. When you say killed by a drunk driver, ho hum. But when you say her body was so badly mutilated that I couldn't salvage an organ, or the funeral couldn't fix her up, or the only thing we could touch was her hand, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, when you say these things, then they can see in their mind this is
Hmm.
a horrible crime.
Hmm.
And which I don't think they'd really thought about before, because most of us don't go into detail. We'll just say, my kid was killed, or I lost. I don't use the term lost, because she wasn't lost. I know exactly where she is. She was killed. So that's the only reason that I did it. Now, will I do it again? Probably not, unless it's, for something like this. The other thing, I am different, I find, than most victims, because I don't focus on Carrie as much as other victims focus on their child. When I do, like, this is the first time I've talked about her and testimony or anything else, and I can't tell you how long, because I always feel that I represent hundreds of thousands of victims across the country. And so I represent them. I represent them all. Those who don't have a voice, can't testify, aren't there, etc. And I didn't want on this one, I didn't want to talk about Carrie, and I didn't want to hold her photo up. And Fillmore handed me the photo and said, hold it up. So I did. And I did talk about her, because I really felt that her crime was so horrific that that would make the point that this was not an accident.
Okay.
Viewers need to hear that because the reason why I look at it that way, it's a picture. You
Mhm.
just planted a picture in their mind so they can relate and understand what you're coming from, what you're standing for. And that's where I was getting ready to ask you is how did that feel standing in the Capitol along with other families? And you just said it. You represent them, not so much your daughter. It was representing them, but they needed to know. And I
Well,
appreciate it. I did hear your I did go back and
video.
I looked at, yes, ma'am, I did. And I thought you did phenomenal. Very
Oh,
good.
thank you.
Yes,
Well, I
ma'am.
didn't have to stand, as you know. I sat next to the
Yes, well,
lobby.
yes, Stan. I mean,
Yeah, but
sat.
I was the
Yes.
only, I was the only one allowed to testify. So, and excuse
She
me,
is
in that.
teaching us words mean something.
No, but in that, I also shared another story. I shared the story of Rosenda because I think her death is also equally horrible, and because of the fact that the man who killed her was charged with murder. But and then I said so many more because I wanted to let them know I'm not here just for Carrie and I'm not here just for
Mhm.
Rosenda. And I'm glad I didn't have to stand like everybody else. It was really emotional, though. I don't know how much the video. I ended up jumping up and hugging a bunch of people over the railing because they were just bless their hearts and they're holding this photo and they can't hold the photo because they're anyway crying so hard. Um, it was just, and I haven't been through something like that in many, many years. You know, I haven't been through a bill that's similar to this where we've had to have victims get up. Now we're now talking about having as many victims as possible come forward in California when we go for the full Senate hearing that would make the bill viable for the governor to sign, who hasn't been so favorable towards victims and survivors, unfortunately, in California. But hopefully that will change. Um, so yeah, it was and even at the press conference, you know, having them stand behind me holding the photos and stuff. And again, I didn't want to hold the photo of Carrie, and but I did because the other victims felt I should. And so, you know, because I really wanted to represent everybody, you know.
Yeah.
So but I didn't hold it while I spoke at the press conference. Others did, but I didn't because I just felt I'm there as a victim advocate representing victims across this country.
Well, I want to thank you before our time ends of taking time out, Miss Candace Lightner. We really appreciate you being our very first on this Crash
My
Talk
pleasure.
3D, which is this is what this is all about, is we're going to talk and tell stories and hope and as
Educate the
we're
masses. Educate the
yes.
masses. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, Mike, I'm going to actually let you close us out on this one this time.
Okay, thank you. And again, to echo Donna's statement, thank you so much for joining us today. When you first started, well, the question, I guess, if I could phrase it right, did you ever imagine the impact that you would have made throughout your career when you first started to what it is now?
Ah.
No, as you know, Michael, when you're in such grief, and I was in such pain, you can barely get through the day. And so my focus was on getting through the day, you know, doing this today and then doing this tomorrow and then doing this and doing this. And I didn't think in terms of the future. I did later on after about 3 years. Then I started thinking in terms of the future. But no, because it was this, we were killing 25,000 people a year in
Mm.
drunk driving crashes. And so my whole thing was focused on stopping that, you know, and changing people's attitudes and saving my surviving children, really. And so I didn't think, you know, a year from now or 2 years from now, or gee, what kind of an impact we would have. And 3 years into it, when I saw the statistics drop so dramatically, was the first time I went, whoa, that wasn't the first time I thought we were making a difference. That's another story. That happened fairly soon. But it was the first time when I saw we were having an impact. And there's a difference between the word making a difference and having an impact. But that was the first time I saw, wow, we're saving lives. We're actually saving lives.
Yes, you are.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know I'm going to stop the recording. We have like 2 minutes left, so we could talk to you right after this. So I guess I shouldn't have said that since we are still recording. I'm going to stop it. But hey, it's all behind the scenes. Everyone can see everything. It's fine. It's fine.
I
Thank you,
agree.
everyone, so much.
We'll see you next time. Crash Talk 3D. Tune in.